Welcome to stream 29 of the series where we're programming a game for the original NES from scratch live on Twitch. Let's get to this thing. So last time we spent a lot of time in the asset tool, this icon, parsing, well, not exactly parsing, but interpreting the parsed JavaScript object notation, JSON data, and we wrote a function to generically handle the retrieval of properties from objects in the JSON object. So we were using this map, and I was able to select the layers object, and then from there I found that it was an array, and so then I could index into the first element because I knew there was just one element in it, and then I could select the data element, which is this array of actual tile data, or meta tile data really. So think about this, we need to be able to properly handle a couple of things. We need to be able to handle multiple tile sets, or multiple meta tiles. I want to see how the tile set is handled in this entry here, where it defines the array of tile set objects. So let's do that. Let's go in and create a new tile set, which is the solid block here. And yeah, we'll call it blue tile, and we'll just save this. We don't need to do much else, so save that. If we go back to our map, we can see that we've got this tile set now here, and I can drop it in. In fact, why don't I fill this section with the blue tile set? Well, you know what? I'll do it further down so that we see it right away when we start scrolling. Alright, so we've got that. Let's export this tile set as JSON to the asset tool folder. So that's exported, and then let's re-export the map. Alright, so if we go back to the map, it didn't reload. Really? I would have thought it would have reloaded, so did I not export it to the right location? No. Let's see, map1.json. Oh, map1.json. That's weird. It's the code for updating the files and the file names is strange how it seems to mangle the names. Alright, let's go see what's going on here, because I thought that would have shown up. So there's map1.json and map1.json. This should just reload, shouldn't it? Or only when I flip back and forth? No. Revert file. That's strange. Okay. Let's try one more time. Export as map1.json. Save. It already exists, so yes, replace it. Why is it not? Let's just try. It says it updated it, but I don't see the additional tile set. I don't see the changes to the map. What's going on, tiled? Why are you being weird? Okay, because according to tiled, it did not actually update it. That's bizarre. Okay, save. Go back to the stamp tool. Export as. See, it keeps adding that extra dot. Oops, not JavaScript. JavaScript object notation. Save. Yes. There we go. All right, so it looks like because the tile set only consists of a single tile, or single meta tile really, right? We kind of luck out with the way that that gets handled, because now the meta tile numbers correspond to each of these tile set, these TSX files, which we can sort of automatically assume maps to these corresponding JSON files that are named the same thing as the tile set, perhaps. Oh, see, look, it exported this with the double period too. Strange. All right, so if we go to this, oh, that's interesting. I don't remember adding that sub-object to this. I must have been messing around with something in the question is where does that live, and how do I get rid of it? It's sub-object param1 param2. Properties history, custom properties. I don't see custom properties. Selector, select objects. I don't want any sub objects. I just want the tile set to exist sans objects. I don't know what a Wang set is. Okay. That's the tile properties. I don't even remember adding that sub-object. Oh, and now it's gone. Okay. Oh, you know what? Now I do, because I forgot we added that for when we were testing the other code. Okay. All right, so we've got our two meta tiles. And then we've got our map with the new meta tiles. All right. So let's try loading the map data and see if we can make it render at least part of that in the asset tool. Starting from, I would imagine we want to kind of start from the bottom, similar to what we would be doing in the game, where we're starting the scrolling of the shooter from the bottom of the screen and scrolling up, right? So hopefully we'll see the pattern from the new map once we get the data interpreted and loaded into the game. So let's do that. So if we click on the JavaScript is JSON. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to get the type of the object. So if we found it, we say if string compare buffer map, else if string compare, and that should be 0. Buffer tile set equals 0. right? So that's this map type and that tileset type. And if it's a map, then what we want to do is we want to select we just want to do get property value. We want to get the layers, which there should only be one. I don't remember, do I don't have one here, so we'll do that. All right, so if we get the token index properly, then what we want to do is we want to check to make sure that the token we're looking at is an array with one yeah, it's an array with one element, and that element should be an object, right? So if token index does not equal type does not equal Jasmine array, do something. If token index type, we gotta increment to the next token index. You know, we can do that after we've checked the type, because if we have to leave, it doesn't matter. So if the following element in the array of tokens is not an object, then we also have a problem, because it should just be one object. You know what? We don't want to do that quite yet. We can end. I have an extra exclamation point for some reason. If token index size does not equal 1, because there should only be one layer, check that the object is an array and that there's only a single element, a single name table layer. That may change because we may need to have two layers, one for the name table and one for objects, depending on how we end up loading bad guys, enemy ships and stuff like that. But we don't have to get ahead of ourselves here. So let's see, so we have that, and then we say, okay, check if it's an object, and if it's not an object, we should do something. And then we got to figure out what we're going to do here within the context of this code. But okay, if we've got the array and it's a size 1, and we have an object following that, then the next thing we need to do is say get property value similar to what we were doing last time. We would say, okay, the address of tokens at token index num tokens minus token index. And the value we want is, we're looking at this object now, hopefully, and we want the data array. So we want the data array, and then we want that to be passed into token index and the 0, and again, we got to do something here. Sorry. All right. And then once we have the data, mean, that gives us the array, and then from there we should be able to select all the elements out. It's kind of going to be a pain in the butt, but we won't do that in here. We'll do that in the a helper function similar to get property value as string. I'm wondering if I want to change this to be the negative case, and then I find myself wanting to use the negative case so that I don't end up with all of these nested ifs. It just gets messy. Like when I write, I generally want to have the if only go in if there aren't going to be a lot of additional conditions to check or steps to check those conditions. But once you get to the point where it's something like this, where you're kind of iterating through and checking a bunch of different conditions before you're doing what you ultimately want to do, you don't want to nest that. I mean, I used to work with someone who had code where the ifs, you know, kind of went all the way out to the right hand side of the code in the editor for all of the ifs that were done, and it just, I don't know, seems messy to me. Of course, we now have the challenge of needing to do something in the case that this is not loading properly, and in this case, because we're in a for loop where we're iterating through the elements, I guess we can just do a continue. Probably want to put up some sort of error message or something, but for now I just want to get this working to test it, and then we can maybe do a similar thing like we did when we detected there were more colors in the tiles than we could actually support. Alright, so now we wanted to get the data, and then we want to verify, okay, if token index dot type doesn't equal Jasmine array. Same thing, right? Because this should be our metatile map data. Make sure it's an array, and then and then from there we just want to iterate through the elements. So something like get token array elements in 32, maybe something like that, where we're passing in our tokens, our max tokens, oops, element count, which we know from the array object itself, and then so we introduce uint64. Anyway, int map buffer, and that should be a pointer to the map buffer, and then max map buffer size. Excuse me. And then this is pretty straightforward. We're just saying, okay, I is 0 to max token element count. I guess we want to say, okay, if element count is greater than max tokens, return an error code. And I know these error codes are not particularly meaningful or descriptive, but right now I just want to do this so that we're not returning the success error code, because one, it's a utility that I'm going to be using for the game by itself, so it's not like this is going to be something that I give to an end user where more details and more information would be better than just, you know, generically it failing. And I also just want to do it quickly. That's really what it comes down to. So return -2. So I'm going to make sure our buffer is okay. If max map buffer size is less than element count, right, we want to make sure that the map buffer can hold the number of elements that we actually have. We want to make sure that the map buffer is a valid pointer, or at least not null. And then we want to make sure that the element count is not more than our max tokens. And then once we've verified all of that, we just want to say map buffer I equals we need the code. What's that macro that I made? Get token value. So JS code tokens I. Oh, it's putting it into right character buffer. I mean, this should be tiny. And then we're just going to convert it to an integer. And then we're returning 0. All right, so that should be okay. So not sure how I want to handle that. Guess we'll say map buffer size. Map buffer size is equal to tokens, token index size. Map buffer is equal to int pointer malloc size of int times map buffer size. Let's clear this out. So that's allocated and zeroed, and then we say get token array elements int 32. And that's our JavaScript code, and then it's tokens, token index. We have to increment the token index. We'll do that in a second. Num tokens minus token index. Element count. Map buffer size and map buffer and map buffer size. Yeah, and then token index. The reason is because we're on the array itself and we want to increment into the primitive. I guess get token in this call. We probably want to check if tokens I type does not equal Jasmine primitive, return -4. All right, let's see how that goes here. Yeah, we can actually, I think maybe that breakpoint is better there than the one I was creating. We should just step through it. Okay, so get property value, layers. So we have a token index, that's 6. And we check to see if it is in fact an array. And if the size is 1. And it is, so we should go to the next one. And, well, that's interesting. Why? It didn't increment token index here. I always forget if that behavior is... I mean, it should have evaluated both parts, but maybe it's because it's... whatever. I'm just trying to be unnecessarily clever here. Let's just put the index increment right there, and then it's also clearer. All right, click on that, and we increment, and now it should be an object, and it is. So let's get the data. Oh, what happened? Tokens. Okay, what's the problem? Oh, why is it a string? Why? Oh, because I shouldn't be incrementing. Okay. All right, so let's step back through that. So it's an object. Now let's get the data. Okay, good. So that gave us an index now. So now, oh crap. Well, that's not going to work. All right, so it's giving us an index back based on the index that we started off here. So what we need to do is subindex. Let's call this token subindex. All right. So now what we need to do is we need to say token index plus equals token subindex. So basically we were getting the index based off of starting from the object that was here at this element in the array, and then the problem was that we were replacing token index with that value, which meant we were, in this particular case, actually going backwards, which is not what we want. So let me move the breakpoint because we were fine up until there. So if I click on map1.json, yep. So, all right, so we're going to increment token index by 2, and then it should be an array, and it is. And the size is 800. So we're allocating our map buffer. We memset that. Good. So token index gets incremented, and we have our primitives, and now we're going to loop through and attempt to load up those meta tile indexes, indices, whatever you prefer. And let's see, element count, good. Map buffer, wow, that's fine. Map buffer is there in the memory watch. So element count and max tokens, we're good. Map buffer is not null. That's good. Map buffer size is less than. It's not less than it, it's equal to it, so that's good. So now we're checking the type to make sure it's a primitive. It is. And now we're going to try and read the value. We got 1, which is correct, and now we're doing an A to I. We're populating that int. So next time around, that's good. I wonder if we could just use bytes. We might not need to use ints because we're using bytes, single bytes in the actual game. Let's change that. And so this now becomes a char pointer. Did we do int 8? No. I don't remember why I only did uint64, but that's okay. So this is A to I, but we want to convert it to a character, and we also want to, before we do that, we want to mask off anything that's not relevant. Right? That shouldn't matter. It should be converting it correctly. That would only matter if you were doing some sort of weird pointer manipulation there. Alright, so yeah, so map buffer, you become one of these bad boys, and then let's go to this and change this. Yeah, okay. So let's hit the map here. Then map buffer is that. So it's all zeroed. So let's index through now. Yep, cool. And so what we should see is, let's see if we go back to, you should see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 ones and then a 0. It looks like that's what we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Okay, so that looks like that's working as expected. So if we step out of that, we've loaded our tile data or our meta tile data, and I see some 2s in there, which is fine because we do have that solid blue tile in here now, and the last row should just be all 1s. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it is okay. And then this is a little, this FD. I believe that's Visual Studio, or actually Microsoft's debug runtime, putting this little bit of extra data at the end of that buffer to help it detect if we overrun the buffer in debug mode, which is not a bad thing. Again, this is not mission critical customer facing stuff, but probably don't want it to have any sort of buffer overruns. so we've got that. Once that's loaded, what we can do here is we can say map buffer size is 0. If map buffer does not equal null, we want to free that memory and make this null. I actually don't care if we... Alright, so that's fine. Or more or less fine. Should probably be checking that this actually finished properly, and then if it didn't, map buffer size is equal to 0, map buffer is equal to null. Let's okay, so that's good. So now what I want to do is I want to do something where we're actually having something occur if the map buffer size goes above 0. So if map buffer size is greater than 0, I want it to draw the map, which means we need to know. So this becomes a little bit more complicated now, even just to draw the map that we've loaded, because we need to find and correlate the tile sets that are in the map file to whatever we have in the asset folder. So we have to look for corresponding .metatile files, essentially. I'm almost wondering if it's worth... It might be worth, instead of working directly with the PNG, to create the metatile, maybe use the tile set. I don't know. I'm not convinced either way on that one. But anyway, let's make some assumptions here for the sake of actually seeing if the data we've loaded makes sense. And we're going to start from the top just for the sake of not having to work backwards right now. I guess we want to know the map width and height, which we're not currently loading. Probably wouldn't hurt. And wouldn't be hard to do. So now we want to do one for as int. Actually, we could somewhat predictably we could reuse some of our code. So what we can do is we can say get property value as string. This will work nicely. Tokens, max tokens, property name, and buffer, and max max sprite file name. Well, we know it's not going to be huge. I'm just going to use 64 here. Buffer 64. And then we don't need to do this. All we need to do is say property value is equal to a to I buffer return, and then return the return code, whatever that may be. I have an extra parenthesis. Okay, so that's cool. We don't need index anymore. Let me do this. Just felt yucky to be doing this in the few places that we were. Where we don't know that we aren't necessarily going to expand it. All right. So get property value as int. All right, so that gets the value as a string, which we would need to do anyway, and then does the a to I and sets the value. And as long as it's not more than a 64 byte integer, or a 64 character string representation of the integer, I should say, we are good. So after all of this, we don't need this. What we do want to do is we want to then within, same thing we did here at the top where we get the property value like that, we say get property value as int, JavaScript code tokens, token index, num tokens minus token index, data, token sub index, doesn't equal 0, then this is why I wasn't really thrilled about the idea of pre-allocating or dynamically allocating the buffer, because then we've got to free it. I may yet change that, because it just makes, there's really no reason that we need to be dynamically allocating it with the amount of memory that this system has and other systems have. I'd rather just allocate the memory straight up right in the beginning and hold on to it until the program is done, and that way I don't have to do memory management or worry about memory leaks, at least from this part of the code. I may change that here in a second, but one other problem is that we are changing the value of token index, so we got to go back when we want to find the value of width. And then this is actually supposed to be map width, right? Yep. And then we don't care. We're not going to do anything. So that's okay. And height. That's map height. And yeah, I'm feeling like this is getting messy enough that I'm just going to do this pre-allocate thing that I was talking about. So map max size equals let's say 1024. So you know what? No, let's go crazy. 4K. Let's pre-allocate 4K. I know. More memory than the whole NES has to work with. for just the map buffer. Insanity. But again, I mean, this machine has, I want to say it has 16 gigs of RAM. Yeah, it's got 16 gigs of RAM. Even on a 32-bit process, we're not talking about a lot of memory here. If this were 64-bit, I mean, yeah, the amount of memory we're talking about for this thing is tiny. So the only thing we really need to do at this point is, I guess we could blank out the memory just to make sure. Zero size of character times max map. Max size. And then we don't have to allocate it. We don't have to memset it because we did that coming in. We are this is now so this is why I had the max map buffer size, because if we had a fixed buffer, so map max size, and then we don't have to do that anymore. We can just set that to 0. Yeah, that's good. So now we should have the width and the height set properly, and then when we come into here, we can start doing some drawing. Still never got away from this whole GUI control ID, which I would like to do at some point, but failing that, we'll just have to live with it for now. Okay. So right now I just want to make an image appear. I actually have an image. Let's just draw a button just for fun, just to confirm that we're actually seeing, we're actually doing what we expect. So 180 map loaded, and no anchor style. Okay, so there's our map loaded button. Okay, so the only other thing is, if we were to make another selection in here, what we really want to do is we want to say map buffer size. Actually, map buffer size is now, well, that's okay. 0 memset map buffer 0 size of character times max size. So we can actually take that out of the check that we're doing here. Because basically if we click on anything, we're going to end up reloading it anyway. Okay, cool. All right, so we get our bogus button there. So what we want to do is, at this point, start drawing the map using the meta tiles. And like I said before, we'll do that assuming the meta tile names and everything, just for the sake of simplicity. So let's see, so the index, the height is 20. So should we, let's see, how would we want to do this? I guess what we would do is we would want to load up those meta tile images in an array of images. Again, these are just, you know, we're not talking about a lot of space here because these are going to be pointers to the meta tile images themselves. We're not pre-allocating the images because we don't. That is being handled by Tiger. Let's just say 100 max meta tiles, and what I'm going to do is cheat and say we have a blank. We don't have a blank image. So what I can do is say what is the, let me think about that. So that's 32 by 32, but we're also scaling the image by what, 4? I don't remember what our fixed scale is. $16? No. GUI image. Oh, it is by 16. Okay. So it's 32 by 16, 512 by 512. Didn't realize they were that big. I guess that makes sense though. So meta tiles 0 is that, and then meta tiles 1 is equal to Tiger load image. I thought I made a way to draw this scaled. How did I do that? That was in the GUI code. Get resized image. So you take an image and then you get the resized version of it. Okay. So Tiger load image. Gradient.png. Well. So I've got the image and I'm going to do my resize call here and then Tiger free that. And then same thing here. And yeah, I know this isn't going to work long term, but just want to make sure we're loading the data properly before we get any further with the map loading process. So we've got our gradient, we've got a black tile, a gradient tile, and a blue tile meta tile loaded in. And then if we get any other index, it's going to be a problem, but that's okay because we shouldn't see anything else. And so let's see, so if map buffer size is greater than 0, then what we want to do is we want to say for int width is equal to 0. Well, actually, we should do height first, but we'll do that in a second. Width is less than map width plus width. Height is less than map height. And this has the obvious drawback of it trying to draw the entire map, which we don't need it to do, but baby steps, people, baby steps. All right, so image. Just basically make these image IDs unique. 180. Well, it's 180 plus width times 512. Really? Oh, that's going to be huge. I wonder if that's right. Well, you know what? We'll find out in a second. And then the height was 20 plus height times 512. And yeah, we could probably bit shift that, I think. 512, meta tiles, map buffer, width plus height times map width. So we're indexing into the map buffer to get the meta tile value, which then translates to an index for the meta tile array. And then we say we don't need to refresh that right now because that's not going to change. So let's see how awful that is. Where's my map? Nothing? Really? We're not getting a map height? Is that the problem? Yeah, we're not getting map height. Alright. At least that makes sense. So we had the token index, we added token subindex, we did what we were supposed to. Oh. So we need to actually do that. Alright, come on. So why didn't it hit that breakpoint? Is there a problem here? Token index 7 tokens. Oh. Well, yeah, but that should be okay because tokens should be an object. It is. All right, so if we step into this for a second here, we're trying to get let's see, if we go back to this and we say tokens, it's an object, and we are looking for a property called width. The object we are supposed to be looking at is this here. So let's see, so that's the property name. So if we step into that, the max tokens, yeah. So the index is 0. All right, so it's an object, that's good. So This should be a string. Right, because it's the first property. And now we're just going through this whole business of iterating over that giant array using our skip counter thing. And then, let's see, token value buffer. We got height, which we eventually will need. Right now we're looking for width. Opacity, type, visible, width. Okay, so that's good. So that's the index. It's 814. So if we go back out, we say tokens 814. That gives us a value, which is what we wanted. And then that should extract out into this buffer the value 8, which did. That's good. RC should be 0. It is. Okay. So if it is, then that is 8. So we're going to put that into that integer pointer, which means the value is 8. So that's fine. But it didn't return 0, even though we got the map width properly. So I just have a return RC. That is that's strange, because if get property value is int doesn't equal 0. What's RC set to? 1. 1? Why did it return 1? Oh. Yeah, see, so this is one of those things where C will screw you up because of that whole evaluating an assignment thing, and that's why it was 1. So what happened was I had said, okay, if basically I'd done this right, and the problem is with this, what it was doing was it was actually evaluating this. It was saying if this equals 0, which is true, assign it to RC, which is why RC was 1, because any non-zero value is considered true in C, versus 0, which is false, because I didn't use the parentheses and I didn't say RC equals that and then compare that to 0, which is why a lot of people recommend when you're writing C code that you put the assignment, you do the comparison first, because then what you'll see is that the compiler is not happy with what you're doing here, because it knows that that's a nonsensical thing that you're trying to do. And so if you surround that with parentheses, then suddenly that works, because you're comparing two things rather than trying to assign the 0 to a value. So that was just a silly mistake. That's why I always like to do it in little manageable steps, because then you catch these things earlier on instead of after you've written a ton of code. So the height is 100, the width is 8. So let's see how this turns out now. Okay. What's the problem? Add control node. I assume that I've run out of control node memory. It is true. Oh yeah, that's not even close to being big enough. Still not big enough, huh? Yeah, that's not going to be big enough because... Alright, so let's regroup here. So making these GUI objects is probably not the smartest thing to do under the circumstance, because, well, I guess they could be. The number of things we're talking about is pretty large, right? So we're talking about, what is it? It's well, I don't have to do the multiplication. 8 by 100, so it's 800 objects, right? Is it 100 or is it 1,000? Either way, it's pretty large. It's 8 by 100, so we're adding 800 items. To that GUI control node tree. Oops. So maybe what we'll do, the problem is I think we're going to end up with, so we can draw it to the window. Problem is that we're going to run into a situation where I think what's going to happen is the GUI controls are going to overwrite what we've drawn. But that's fine. Let's do this first. Map buffer width plus height times map width. That's our image. Wait, there are more parameters. Destination X. It is 180 plus width times 512. Height was 10, I believe, plus height times 512. Source X is 0, 0, and then 512, 512. Matter. Yeah, so we don't see anything because it's drawing it onto the screen, and then the screen is getting updated with the controls. So what we probably want to do, we probably want to have a map image that we can create and then draw that as a GUI image. That's probably, yeah, I mean that's what you'd end up doing anyway. You'd have some sort of canvas or image object in your, you wouldn't do it as a bunch of separate image controls. So I'm not sure why I was, I mean, I know why I was doing that, but I'm not sure why I didn't think about that sooner. So let's do this. Let's create an image called map image, and we will allocate a bitmap. Geez, I don't know. It really doesn't matter right now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw those tiles, the meta tiles, to that instead. We're going to say map tile, what did I call it? I don't know. Keep hitting the wrong. I thought I remembered the shortcut for this, but I don't. Map image, and then GUI GUI image 500 5000, let's say, and it's 180 by 10. I don't know. If the tiles, if it's 8 tiles, it's gonna be too big. I'm gonna increase the image itself to be that size, and then it's map image. What's the other parameter? Fresh false. Like, I'm not sure how big we want that image to actually be. Yeah. So let me think about why. So we don't need to load. I think for the map, we don't need these to be quite as large as we were making them. I think we can just make them their normal size. Thinking about that, because the map itself is going to be pretty large. We might eventually want to be able to change the scale. But generally, I think in the asset tool, we're just going to be reviewing the meta tiles. So, maybe that was a stupid idea in the first place. So, or I shouldn't say maybe. Definitely that was a stupid idea. So this would be 32, so shift by 5. And that's shift by 5. And then these are 32 by 32. And then that image is huge, but that's okay. We'll deal with that in a second. What? Let's see. Map buffer width plus height times map width 1. Oh, damn it. I don't want to do that every time. I just want to do that at the end. Yeah, there we go. There's our map. All right. So, and then we want to do that destination XY. We can actually do that right at the 0 position. Okay, cool. Now, I'd like to be able to scroll this. so we can actually see the rest of the content of the map at some point. But let's do a couple of things. Let's reduce the image size to something a little bit more reasonable. Cool, and now our buttons are back, so that's cool. Okay, so then the other thing I want to do is actually want to start from the bottom here, since we know that's what we want to do for the game. So we say map height minus 30. It's less than map height. Okay. So we should just get one full screen, just kind of right here when I click on it. And we didn't, because I screwed something up. Map height is 100. These are 32. 32 pixels, right? Seven. Wait a minute. It's 240 divided by 32 is 7 exactly. So it's 7 metatiles. It's still odd that it's drawing a black screen. What am I screwing up here? Let's do this. If I do 5, what I should see is that it shifted everything down a little bit, right? No, it is, we're just removing those 5 metatiles. Oh. Well, now, that is a little ridiculous. Okay. So it's because I'm offsetting everything relative to not the starting position, but to 0. So it's drawing it in its absolute position in the image, which means that sometimes, that means if you go far enough down, it's just not correct. Or, well, as you progress down, you're losing a row, and then you're, yeah. Start height. So I should just create something called start height, and start height equals 7. Let's just say now map height minus 7, and that's start height. Okay, so that is correct, I believe, because we have, let's see, 1, 2, 4, 7, and we have that triangular pattern with the blue and the gradient. That looks right. I'm curious, that does nothing. Okay, we go back to it. That's good. So, all right. So we're loading the tile data right. That's good. I'm going to start this here. And then what we can do, just so we have something a little more tangible to wrap up the stream with, because I need to implement scrolling here so we can kind of move back and forth. I'd like to do, let's see, so that create map button doesn't actually do anything, right? Oh, it makes that visible when we were going to actually build the map in the tool here. I'm going to, you know what, I'll comment that out instead of deleting it. Because we may eventually come back to that. Oops. That's not a comment, that's 2 periods, which makes no sense. Okay, so what we need to do now, just for the sake of, again, just testing this out, why is this open? I want to do what we would need to export this into this, where we will replace this info here with the actual data from that. So again, kind of going on this whole kick of just kind of hard coding some things to get the basic idea working. We are going to, let's see, how do we do this? So we need to first grab our first screen's worth of data and then kind of unfurl it backwards up the level. So this button also shouldn't exist if map buffer size is greater than 0. Okay, so that, and then if that. So we do nothing until the map buffer size is greater than 0, and then that button will appear. I have an extra close paren. Right, so if I click, okay, so that's gone, and then I click on the map, and bam, the button's there. Okay, cool. So from there, what we'll really do is we'll export the map data like we have been in sort of that intermediary format, like we do with the meta tiles, where we generate the meta tile, and the same thing with the sprite, where we generate those files that are sort of specific to the asset tool, and then when we do the export, we're going to iterate through and capture the map data and export that just like we do with the other things. But let's see, so we have our map data. So what I want to do is I want to say, okay, start height is equal to map height minus 7, like we were doing before, and then I want to map file minus 1 s open s map file, just call it level 1 dot bin, and O binary, O create, O write only. Oh, come on, I'm going to remember these flags. Share, deny, no. And then, oh, what is that last flag? Damn it, I thought I was going to remember it this time, for sure. S, I write. So close. If map file is greater than or equal to 0, then, not map fill, map file, then we are going to write map file. So we're going to start with our, well, first thing we have to write is the height of the map. So write map file character, well, equals character map height. So that's our length, that's our number of rows, right? Like we have that byte there, and then we want to say for height is equal to start height. Well, actually, yeah, no, that's fine. This is equal to start height. Height is less than map height plus height. And we will just be writing our bytes out. Int width is equal to 0, width is less than map width, plus width. So just to put a comment on it, write the row count, write the first screen in order from top left to bottom. So that's the map file, and then it's map buffer, width times width plus height times map width. And we want the pointer to that. And then size of char. Actually, know what the size is. We could cheat a little bit here, right? Can we we're writing it in the proper order, so we can even be a little bit more efficient about this and write this a row at a time. So this is just that, and that's times map width. So we're just writing this whole row at a time instead of one byte at a time. And then once we have that, what we want to do is we want to traverse the array backwards, starting at the start height -1, and then write a row by row backwards. So then when we say while start height is greater than or equal to 0, minus my start height, unwind the map data backwards to 0, row 0. So that's going to give us that, and we just say that. So what we're doing there is we're saying, okay, we have this screen that we're going to write out, right? And then we're starting here, we're going to go one row at a time backwards. I guess we can probably figure out a way to do that more efficiently. I don't know. Again, you know, all of this is us just kind of trying things out and seeing what works for the NES and what works efficiently. Oops, I don't want to save that. All right, so we should be writing out. Let's see, if it's 800 bytes, we should be writing out 801 bytes because there's the map height plus the 800 map points. So create map. Oh, that doesn't fill me with confidence. Oh, dummy, because I'm not. Yeah, well, the button got stuck because you were in an infinite loop. Good work. We should probably add truncate here. So if it exists already, we just truncate the file back to 0 bytes and try again. Create map. Okay, so the button didn't get stuck there, so we're not in an infinite loop, which is always a good thing. There's level 1 bin. What's the actual size? Should be 801 bytes. It is. That's good. I don't know what that was all about. Let's look at this in the hex editor. Yep. So 100 rows, and then we've got our, yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's see what happens if we try and use that in the game instead of this data. So see you later, level 1. Oh, I didn't set that up. That's too bad. All right. What are you trying to do? Oh, right. I got to copy that over. That would help. Okay. Fingers crossed. Let's see how this goes. Okay, that's actually not that bad. It's not right 100%, but it actually, you know, part of it is I reversed the tile sets, I think. Let's reverse that back this way and then try it. Yep. Okay. Okay, wow. All right. So that is not half bad, considering that that was the first time we tried to get that into the ROM. You're going to pause for me. So what I'm curious to see is how close it is to the actual. I know the colors are wrong. That's fine. I want to know how accurately it loaded the map. That looks 100% right. Yeah. That's pretty awesome. So that loaded that right. Now, of course, we still have the problem that it gets to a point where it then no longer loads correctly. Let's figure that out, because that's pretty exciting that that worked. So let's see. So why? I have a feeling it's something to do with the way we're... Alright, what is that called? Where is that code? Something to do with the way that we are decrementing through the level data, I think. Well, actually, we're incrementing through the level data after we do the initial. So what is it? So when we... Is the problem that we are... Load new row. I have a feeling that the problem is that we are... Why would that be the case, though? I was thinking that we were overflowing overflowing the byte, but that doesn't make a lot of sense because... Or at least it doesn't right now. Let's think about that. So we increment the subrow, and once we get to process scrolling, we increment the camera Y. We load it and we say if it's 8, then we want to increment to the next meta tile. Subrow. And then in the subrow, we're in that part of it, we are storing the camera Y, we're decrementing M tile Y, which is the sub counter, which should be what value when we come out of the load of the level. Don't remember. Yeah, it's 3 because that's the number of meta tile rows. So we're decrementing that. We're decrementing that and then checking to see if we've wrapped around because we processed all 4 rows. If we did, then we're going to go to increment meta tile row to the next meta tile row. And we do. So load A3, yeah, and then we clear carry and we load 8 to go to the next. Okay, so the problem is likely with tile Y. Because I bet tile Y is wrapping. And then what we need to do is we need to... Well, that's weird that it would do that because it's only 100 rows. So what would be... What would be doing that? What would be... Load x0. Get that into... Oh. I wonder if if we're hitting a boundary, we add tile Y to row, yeah, to the map's low. That's probably what it is. And then we would need to, it's a little messy. So branch carry clear to skip row mem inc. Skip row mem inc. We may have to increment row mem +1 because we carried on the tile Y add. So what we would do is we just say increment row mem +1 here if carry is set. I think that'll probably fix it. Let's see. Well, it's actually better-ish. Seems to be working. But we hit a weird, looks like we hit a weird bug where it's messing with some of the, it's not correctly loading the meta tiles somewhere. So it's not quite as bad as it was before. Oh, you know what? It's probably not even... I wonder if this is even potentially more complicated than just adding what I was trying to do there. Let's do this. Let's change up the map a little bit more so that it's a little bit more identifiable in areas, like what we're actually trying to do, or what part of the map we're actually looking at, because it's a repeating pattern, which is fine, but it makes it harder to identify where we're actually looking. So let's remove all of these meta tiles, and what we'll do is, let's see, can we do some sort of marker system here like that, and then maybe we switch to the other. Oops. Just so that it's more obvious what part of the map we're looking at. And this is by no means perfect, and we're only using 2 meta tiles to do this, but I want to see why this is loading that data that way. I'm still pretty happy with the fact that it's even doing what it's doing, which I thought for sure we would need to spend more time messing with that, but that's not half bad that it worked. So let's create the map, which just dumps that to a binary file. Got that. Let's put that into the shooter folder and replace it. And let's build, and let's reload the ROM. Okay, so that's looking good so far. Okay, so somewhere at this point, it's actually messing with the attribute table, it looks like. And then it's looping back partially or something. It's something to do with the way that the data in the name table is being manipulated. So at this point, I mean, it's not like it's not working, obviously, but it's not as broken as it could be. So given that we're at about 10 of the hour, I'm going to wrap this for now, and then hopefully on Monday of next week, Windows Update issues aside, I should be able to, I think we can spend some time debugging this, and that's the reason why I want to stop now, is that basically if I start looking at this, we're going to end up spending another at least an hour probably stepping through assembly and mapping out what happens when it gets to the point where it starts corrupting the name table with the incorrect tile set data. So rather than do this and have this be a 3-hour stream, I think I'll call it quits for the night. Hopefully this weekend I will have the little short video, the first of the hopefully several short videos posted, sort of like I had mentioned before, distilled versions of some of the stuff we learned. This first one will be really basic, just getting CC65 installed. I think I had mentioned it, but even if I had, just to recap, the reason I would want to start there is that it seems like some people even just kind of struggle getting that far because they're not used to using command line tools, and they don't know how to test that it's working and stuff like that. So look for that posted on YouTube with it'll be in a different playlist than these programming streams, but hopefully that'll be useful too. So yeah, good progress. I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously a lot of hard-coded stuff in here that we have to break out and make changes to not make any assumptions about, you know, where the files are going and what meta tiles we're using, but you know, really cool that we're able to get that data from tiled into the game and that it's mostly right. So as always, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you can find me on Twitter at Clearvis. You can find me on the Nintendo Age Discord. And you can always comment on this video on YouTube, since they're all recorded and posted there after the stream. And I will catch you Monday. Have a great weekend, and see you next time.